Welcome to the show, everybody. It's the Crypto Lark. Today I got the chance to sit down with Gary Markham. He is the CEO over at aXpire. Gary, welcome.
Hey, thank you so much for inviting me.
My pleasure. Now, for anybody who hasn't heard about you, what are you guys doing? Can you give us the short version?
Yeah, so we're running a blockchain spend management, expenses management and payment system design, development, and deployment, primarily focused on asset managers, hedge funds, private equity, fund administrators.
Great. And so, what are the benefits for using your product?
I'd say the main pain point that we're trying to attack with the aXpire product is the relief on human manual processes, the use of paper, spreadsheets, PDFs to interact inside a company. So inter and interdepartmental communications, data transmittal. We bring all that into a single site app called Resolver.
Very cool. And so, what are the key areas of focus that you guys are looking at? So, what particular areas are you hoping to guys find those streamlining possibilities in?
Well, we're kind of finding new ones every day, as you can imagine, with different client engagements. But to this point, certainly the overuse in terms of collecting data, manipulating data, and then moving that into another part of the business, then somebody else, some other poor person, had to correct it, check it, validate it, and then pass it on. So it's really cutting out some of those human manual, very inefficient processes. Paper, I mean, that's an old one, but you'd be surprised how many organizations still rely on paper. So that's another pain point we get rid of.
Well, that
Or maybe you wouldn't. Maybe you're not surprised.
well, I'm not surprised at the same time. I remember watching a couple years ago a video that the United States government's still using old floppy disks for their nuclear weapons, and I'm just thinking, oh my goodness, is this for real? But it was for real. That was the scariest part. And so, yeah, I'm not surprised that most businesses are still mostly based on paper. That transition to the internet, I think, is hard for perhaps some of the older generations in particular to really adapt to and say, hey, we're going to hop on board with this. But the digitalization of everything, of course, is going to be absolutely massive. Now, why does your project need the blockchain, and how do you utilize the blockchain technology?
Well, right now we're only utilizing it in a limited fashion. So we're building out what we call the e-procurement or e-bidding front end of the application, so that vendors who reside within the application can come through that channel. So we've tokenized that. One other method for the use of the token is actually as a trading mechanism within the workflow itself. So like a burn rate, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the two areas right now. But we're exploring. The system's only on version or release 2, so we've got a long roadmap ahead of us. So as I said to you about knowing what we know now and what's in our roadmap, every new client experience gives us an opportunity to explore new possibilities to increase not only the functionality and the features, but how we can better utilize the blockchain technology to underpin that.
I see that a lot in different projects where we're in this kind of exploration phase with people coming in and saying, well, what exactly can we do with this? How can we utilize this? What can it do for my business in particular? And there's always new use cases that we find out all the time.
Yeah.
One thing that I found really interesting about you is that you're not just an ICO blockchain project. There's actually a whole company behind this. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons I believe that our ICO was very successful is because of the background and credibility of some of the team, some of the advisors, and predominantly the background of the individuals who founded aXpire. So yeah, aXpire was effectively a spin-off from another company which it was involved in, or is involved, because I'm out of that now, is involved in vendor management, predominantly around the professional services, attorneys, legal, accounting, and things like that. So there was already some domain expertise in that space, albeit more insurtech related as opposed to fintech related. So it was a sort of a natural transition away from that space into the new fintech space with aXpire.
Pretty cool. What is Matchbox?
That's a newly created P2P application. If you think about what Resolver is doing is engaging a vendor with a business, so purely a B2B play within the spend management, asset management space. Matchbox is basically a P2P release of the same formula, albeit it's designed for smaller projects. I don't want to name too many commercial names out there, but if you think about Fiverr meets Freelancer, it's kind of like that, where he said, well, I'm starting a new business, I need a logo, or I've got a design idea, but I don't really know how to wireframe it, or I want you to build me a website. These sorts of projects where we can, again, tokenize the trading element, where the value of the token becomes the purchase and the payment of that particular project.
Okay, cool. So this is a project that offers something not just for businesses, but also for individuals. So there's that whole range out there for people to come and access your product.
Yeah, I would say that's more on the P2P side than probably on the business side. But maybe SME, small businesses, startups, and things like that would probably get more usage out of that, I imagine.
Okay, interesting. What about machine learning? You guys are going to be leveraging this. What exactly are the applications for you to utilize machine learning?
Lark, do you mind if I add one more point to the prior conversation about Matchbox?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you picked it up, but literally 2 days ago, we made an announcement about a renewed partnership with Ethos, where their universal wallet is now tied to Matchbox and vice versa. So
I did see that. It's very interesting, and you guys have been getting some really cool partnerships. We're going to talk about those in just a few minutes, though. So
okay, sorry.
That's okay. Let's go ahead and jump into machine learning and tell me about that.
Yeah, again, because of the history of a lot of the founders of aXpire have come from a data analytics or data-driven type of digital environment, machine learning is something that we've actually been doing for a very long time. I would say we've been doing machine learning for probably longer than it's been called machine learning. So I'm sure you've heard of predictive analytics. So predictive analytics is one of the bedrocks, the foundation stones for machine learning, as is machine learning is one of the foundation blocks for AI.
Very cool. Any company, I think, not doing this in the future is going to be left far behind, because this is going to be very important as we move forward. What about your token? What exactly is your token doing? How is it operating within your ecosystem? And I guess what kind of gives it its value, so to speak?
Well, as you know, in this world, there's kind of two versions of the value of tokens. One is in the speculative cryptocurrency trading market, which is, runs alongside the same themes as, I guess, a bourse or a stock market would run. We don't have any control over that. It's not something we're focused on, albeit the value of AXP tokens themselves has to be supported by the underlying business, which is what aXpire is focused on. So the utilization of the token is predominantly in the front end, which is in the e-procurement. We call it e-bidding. So you imagine you send out a project requirement to 3 or 4 vendors. They can come in and utilize that same token to actually bid on projects. We've got another function that's being created right now for a burn rate within the workflow. So I mentioned to you about the interdepartmental transmittal of data. Mm-hmm. So if you imagine that if those weren't departments, but those were businesses. So again, we're looking for the token to be a trading vehicle within that workflow.
Okay, so it'll essentially be, if I need a service, I'll have to pay in that token, or if we're doing a transfer between companies or individuals, I suppose, if we're using Matchbox, I'll require the token for that as well.
Yep. Do you know Ripple's model? I'm assuming, where again, it's a fairly similar model to what we're using, albeit there has to be a continued fiat. You've got to be able to you've got to have a hybrid. As you said, we're in this evolutionary stage where if you try and move all businesses into the blockchain and force them to use tokens when they're not used to it, it's going to be difficult. So we've got to have a combination, a hybrid model where fiat is still mixed with crypto.
I think we're going to see a future where people can still use their fiat, but actually the transactions will take place in blockchain. It'll happen very seamlessly. They won't even know they're using blockchain, in the same way that a lot of people use their mobile phone and don't realize that they're using 100 different technologies when they're playing whatever game it is they're playing across mobile networks. And so it'll kind of be a more seamless experience for people. Now, you guys are on the Ethereum blockchain. Why did you choose Ethereum over the competitors?
Well, I'm the CEO of the organization. Don't take all of the credit for everything the company does. So A lot of the technical decisions around which platform to base the token on have not come off of my desk. They've come off of those that sit on the advisory team. We're also partners with R3, which is the standard. So our devs are also trained in the Corda standard, which is actually an emerging standard predominantly around the banking world. They have around 125 banks on their partners page. But we jumped onto that one early because we saw banking and assets under management around the banking world as being something that we need to stay very close to. So we're actually keeping our options open. We've got Corda, we've got Ethereum, looking at Hyperledger, and in fact a couple of others, because it's kind of like, maybe you're too young to remember this, but the old Betamax VHS wars, where one standard, albeit better, the machine was more expensive, lost out to the less technically capable machine that was half the price. So no one really knows who's going to be the leaders in this, and whether it's a leader in a cryptocurrency that's being traded to buy a Starbucks coffee world, which is more around a commercial transaction. None of that's played out yet. So we're playing all of our cards fairly open to make sure that we can adopt multiple standards.
Great. It's really important to be flexible because you just don't know what's going to happen. Obviously, blockchain technology is here to stay, but any particular cryptocurrency may not have that long-term running power that, of course, any business wants to have, right? So
exactly.
Now, about your team, I was looking at the team. There's a lot of great people on there. It's a very solid team. You guys have a good list of devs. Are there any positions that you still need to fill? Are there any weaknesses that you think the team still has?
Yeah, I think on the marketing side, and obviously part of what we're doing here today is helping us to get the word out, so to speak, which I said thank you right at the beginning. So to be more visible as a business, I think that's an area where we're to and are actively beginning to get more resources behind sales. And when I say sales, I mean sales of our real applications out into real customers, generating recurring revenues. So that's something that we're working very, very rapidly close to. If you think about the history of what happened with the company, we're actually right at the end of our 12-week plan that we started back in January. That only concluded last week, but in fact, we got through our 12-week or 11.5-week plan in under 4 days. So it was a little bit of a topsy-turvy.
Very cool. It's good to see plans coming to fruition. That's always, of course, important. I want to talk a little bit about some of your partnerships and some of your advisors. Now, obviously, the biggest name as far as your advisors go is Roger Ver. So what role has he been playing?
Well, again, in terms of navigating the crypto world, we needed to make sure that we had somebody on the inside that understands that space far better than we do, coming from the domains from which we come. So we only went for the best. We thought we partnered with the people that know this environment the best, and that's why we went with Roger. We actually work very closely with also Mate Toke, his COO. I talk with him and I work with him 2 or 3 times a week. He's the real operator within the business in terms of getting stuff done with businesses that they advise, like ours. Roger clearly is there as a market leader, has a lot of presence. When people hear what he says, they listen. And so we wanted him to be on site also as a message, be able to get a message out for us that could share with our community and also give a high level of credibility.
Excellent. And you've got a lot of other great advisors on there as well. And of course, as you mentioned earlier, you guys are working with the guys over at Ethos. Now you're taking part in their airdrop program. Is that correct?
Yeah, we are, exactly. Yes, we've been pretty much with them from the beginning. Great connections, great people, very clever people. Again, you know, it's like anything. If you surround yourself with very clever people, hopefully some of that will rub off.
It's a good way to think about it, without a doubt. And I've talked to Shingo before, and he's a great mind, without a doubt. So certainly great to see those people on board as well. Now, recently you have joined the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. What does that mean for you, actually?
Well, again, it's like an element of being in a community, or being part of, I don't want to call it a club, but being in a community of like-minded companies and individuals where a networking type of atmosphere is created. So that if we've got questions, or we've got designs on moving down a certain path, or moving our roadmap in a certain direction, we can tap into that community and find out there's people in there that can help us, guide us, advise us on is that the right direction, and also learn from the wider community about what's going on generally.
I think it's a really great, I want to call it club again, but a really great organization because there are so many great players within there, companies which are doing fantastic work, and the ability to network and have those connections I think will be really powerful moving forward. Now, your parent company, they have some really great clients on their client list. Are any of those clients showing interest in aXpire? Are any of them interested in coming over and actually utilizing your system?
Well, they're certainly on the hit list, I'll tell you that much. Not all of them, but certainly some of the insurance-related clients are, because we're basically focused on AUM, assets under management. So if a large carrier, insurance company, typically will have an asset management department, and some of the larger ones clearly have tens of billions or even hundreds of billions of AUM. And when you have that type of money being managed, there'll be asset managers, there'll be fund administrators, there'll be all kinds of technology, there'll be all the kind of issues that we've talked about earlier in the call that we believe we could come in and relieve some of those pain points. So yes, most of those are absolutely on our radar screen, yes.
Awesome. Now, let's imagine for a minute, I'm a typical business, let's say. How are you going to get me on board? How are you going to market to me? How are you going to get me in the door? And once I'm in the door, what's the experience going to be like for me? How are you going to help my business to save money, and what are the different steps that we could go through to help my business save money?
Well, I'd say this was more of a traditional sort of sales cycle. Where evaluating the need and the requirement, understanding the pain points of the customer is vital. So we don't go in and sell anything, to be honest with you. What we do is we go in and we listen and we learn. So the audience within the client's likely to be the CFO, the Chief Compliance Officer, and the General Counsel. The CFO and who runs the finance department, they're the people that tend to receive all of the data downstream of everybody else and then have to fix all the problems. So the CFO is typically the one carrying most of the pain. So we'll go and talk with the CFO. And if they're open and honest with us, they'll be able to open up and explain how they run their business and how things can be improved. So those three individuals, or two out of those three, typically are the targets that we look for. And basically, we are information gathering. It's sufficient, and the willingness is there to share that with us. We can then demo the product, show them what we can do. It's also another learning opportunity for us, because we never think we've got a finished product, ever. It's something where you meet a new client, you have different ideas, different ways of doing things. We can learn that and build that into the roadmap for the future releases. So it's a kind of a two-way street where we'll collaborate with them. We'll even share what we've done and what we're about to do with them, bounce ideas off them, because then it becomes an open forum where they can share with us. It's almost like free product development, and we can put that into our roadmap. And that's how that's our philosophy on how we move the business forward. So there's no really hard sell. It's an information requirements gathering. And if there's a meeting the minds, if the pain levels are high enough, and the way we articulate the value propositions in terms of the benefits, the financial benefits and efficiencies is strong enough, then we'll make the sale.
That's awesome. I like how you not only saying we're here to listen. We're not here to sell. We're here to listen. But then you're saying, by the way, we want to go listen to the CFO, because that's the guy who's pulling the strings. He knows the data. He knows the financial pain points. But he's also going to be the person who's probably going to sign off on actually using this product in the end. So it's a very clever strategy. Right. I like it. Now, what about your roadmap? What can we expect from you guys in 2018? What are the milestones we can look forward to?
Okay, well, we've already touched on the tokenomics in terms of the burn rate within the application for a resolver. A lot of focus is now going on basically a twin track development cycle going on at the moment. So the team working on the resolver program, obviously assisting the Matchbox devs. Matchbox is obviously a big focus because it's more of a domain related product. So there'll have to be more marketing going into that. And again, we've got several sort of core functions that we're marrying from one application to the other. So there's a lot of transitioning going on now between the two things. I think we've articulated Matchbox as a kind of a freelancers type of application. So we're kind of, I wouldn't say mimicking, but we're kind of following that And then we've got a few tricks up our sleeves, which I think we can pull out at the right time to help boost the popularity of the product. I don't want to give too much away because I don't know where this video. I think we want to give information when we're ready to be able to demo it, because a lot of people say, right, what have you given me? And we've got a lot of things in train that currently we're not able to demonstrate because they're not that yet evolved. But throughout the next 3 quarters of year, there'll be a lot of individual, what I call mini of these we can share with the community and member base.
Great. And what about your competition? Who do you see as being your biggest competitors in this arena?
Well, at the top end of the scale, I'd like to say companies like SAP, Ariba, and Coupa. And that's on the resolver side. Obviously, on the Matchbox side, I've mentioned 2 competitors already. Now, are we competing with SAP in the types of enterprise level applications that they implement? Absolutely not. Can we learn from some of the things they do and some of the things they do that they shouldn't be doing? Of course. Coupa, I'd say, was the one that we mirror ourselves on the most. They're what I call industry or vertical agnostic. They have many, many verticals where they're touching their payment and spend systems are touching on customers. We want to obviously focus on asset management right now, but then look to repurpose Resolver so that we can make it more vertical agnostic and take it into other industries.
I notice you haven't mentioned any blockchain-based projects.
Well, I mean, we've got a combination of obviously core, what I call .NET devs, and we've got our blockchain devs. So they are working in unison with one another to try and learn off each other. But it's almost that the cycle of development in terms of the design phases have to go through the blockchain question. I think the question you asked earlier, why blockchain? And we're not just going to build something out of blockchain because we have blockchain devs. We're only going to build something out of blockchain where the business case to do that stands up.
Excellent. Now, if anybody wants to find out more about what you guys are doing, I'm going to put a link down below to the website. Is there any other places that they should check out, though, if they want to get some more information about what you guys are doing?
No, they can get some use case information there. There's the infographics video. There's obviously the contact information. We're pretty quick to respond. We have a pretty, strong policy on communicating out when people reach out to us. Reaching back is something that we do very, very rapidly.
Excellent. Gary, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us today. It's been very interesting learning a bit more about your project. And of course, I think anyone who hasn't heard about it before has hopefully got some really good information too. So thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for inviting me.